Thank you, Hugh. It's good to be on with you. Yeah, it was great to address Republicans and the whole nation, and happy September to all your listeners. Fall starts this month, and Halloween is next month.
Hooray. And then we can get on past the election. Senator, after the Thursday night festivities, many people were assaulted as they moved towards their car and dispersed. I don't know if you were in that crowd that encountered demonstrators, were you?
No, Hugh, I did not attend the president's speech on the South Lawn of the White House, but I was appalled by the violence I saw in the streets of Washington. I know many people, not just public figures, who were accosted by those anarchists and insurrectionists. It's shameful that Muriel Bowser did not allow the Washington, D.C. police to do their job and protect innocent citizens on the streets of Washington. Also, I gather that the Secret Service wanted to go out and help the police as well, and Bowser had objected to that. It's the exact kind of feckless and indecisive leadership we saw from Muriel Bowser in June that allowed rioting to happen in and around the White House.
You know, the mayor of D.C. is going to be responsible for the closure of all these restaurants on the U Street corridor and in Adams Morgan and DuPont Circle, where people are just not going to go if the mob is allowed to harass and intimidate people.
I'm sure that all your listeners have seen those videos of people eating outside because of continued restrictions for indoor dining, in which these angry mobs come up and start screaming at diners and patrons for no reason whatsoever, demanding that they spout their political slogans. And usually the police are nowhere to be seen. Now, I'm confident that your rank and file police officer in Washington, D.C. wants to stop that kind of aggression on the streets of Washington before their city loses out, as you say, on people coming to visit for tourism or just commerce dining out. But once again, it's the hapless and feckless leadership in Washington, D.C. that is restraining the police from doing their jobs.
Now, Senator Cotton, I don't know that anyone has asked you this yet. When you look at violence in Portland or Kenosha, people forget that you had a platoon in Baghdad at the height of the surge. And so that's a war zone, but you also know how to control a war zone. What do you think needs to be done to restore order in Portland?
Hugh, there has to be an overwhelming display of force. That's the way you avoid the use of force by the authorities or the use of force by these armed anarchists and insurrectionists in the street. So, for instance, last weekend in Kenosha, it was obvious from reports on social media or in the news that there was going to be some degree of rioting Sunday night. The governor of Wisconsin should have immediately mobilized the National Guard and sent them out to preempt any effort at violence. Should have simply said, we can have protesters here, we can have counter-protesters there, but there will be zero violence. There will be zero looting. There will be zero arson on the streets tonight. He only did that after 3 nights and more loss of life in Kenosha, and that has stopped the violence. These mayors and governors need to understand from the very beginning, if they have one of these flashpoints, an overwhelming show of force from the beginning is how to avert the use of force by anyone.
Now, President Trump told Laura Ingraham last night, I strongly agree with this, his supporters should not confront opponents. They should not go toe-to-toe with Antifa. They ought not to show up at any kind of demonstration anywhere and seek confrontation. I agree with that. Even though it's their right, I just don't see any upside in engaging with anarchists, Senator Cotton. Do you agree or disagree with the president and me?
Well, I think the president's very concerned about what he saw in Portland over the weekend, or what he saw just outside the White House on Thursday night of these radical insurrectionists and anarchists, so people who truly want to burn down our system. I mean, they chant that. They chant death to America, engaged in wanton violence against anyone. So his calls not to be confrontational in that matter, not to go out of one's way, I think are prudent under the circumstance. Now, of course, it's a different circumstance, like some of those business owners in Kenosha who were trying to protect their own property. They don't really have a choice when the mob shows up. Although, of course, one would hope that mayors and governors would allow the police and, if necessary, the National Guard to protect property and innocent lives from that kind of violence.
Now, I want to switch to specific issues, Senator. Here's Joe Biden yesterday talking about fracking, cut number 3.
I am not banning fracking. Let me say that again. I am not banning fracking. no matter how many times Donald Trump lies about me.
Now he is for fracking after he was against it, Senator Cotton. I've played a number of montages where he's been against fracking, new fracking, old fracking, fossil fuels. How in the world can people ignore this?
Well, Hugh, let's give Joe the benefit of the doubt, and let's not assume that he's lying. Let's just assume that he forgot when he said that he was going to ban fracking repeatedly during the Democratic primaries.
He did. I mean, he did. Okay, translate this if you can. Cut number 2.
COVID has taken this year, just since the outbreak, it's taken more than 100 years. Look, here's the lives. When you think about it, more lives this year than any other year for the past 100 years.
Okay, Senator, what's that mean?
Well, Hugh, that wasn't the smoothest delivery off a pre-written speech on a teleprompter, but I'm not sure I can translate it for you.
All right, then he asked the rhetorical question. Cut number 1.
Ask yourself, do I look like a radical socialist with a soft spot for rioters? Really?
My answer is yes, because on one side you've got Kamala Harris, and on the other side you've got AOC. But what do you say, Senator?
Well, he looks like an empty suit that for 50 years has gone along with whatever fad and fashion is ascendant in the Democratic Party. And now the fad and fashion is to coddle these rioters and these anarchists in the streets because it's part of their base. Look, Joe Biden's staff repeatedly contributed money to a fund that bailed out suspected murderers and rapists. Kamala Harris even went on social media and encouraged all of her followers to give money to that bail fund in Minnesota that was bailing out all those hardened career criminals. Don't look at what they say in the heat of the moment of the campaign when they know that they're in trouble. Look at what they've done.
Now, Senator, I hate to disappoint you, but you did not give the best speech at the convention. Ann Dorn did, and the Muellers did. And Ann Dorn, I'm just never going to forget, and I'm never going to forget the Muellers. It seems like there's a bump. It seems like, well, the Emerson poll says it's a 2-point race for Biden right now, which is a statistical blip. And that's an outlier, maybe. It's the first poll that's had it that close. What do you think has happened after the 2 conventions?